Good afternoon. It's Ed Pozzuoli, CEO of Tripp Scott, and with us today is, we really do have an honor, former Congressman from North Carolina and Chief of Staff for Donald Trump, Mark Meadows. Mark, welcome.
It's great to be with you. You know, I'm surprised, honestly. Here I am at a law firm. That's not normally an invite that I would get. But it's great to be with you.
Well, I wanted to start with, the conservative movement, that the Partnership Institute that you're working with, and I wanted to start with this just so people understand what you're doing today. And tell us a little about the Institute.
The Conservative Partnership Institute is a 501c3, Ed. We actually like to bill ourselves as an action tank, not a think tank. We think Washington, D.C. has way too many think tanks, lots of ideas, but there's not a whole lot of courage in Washington, D.C., so we're in the business of helping members of Congress and senators and their staff not only have courage to get the right thing done, but then the tactics to be able to accomplish that. So I went to work there 4 years ago, came out of the White House, was not on everybody's hire list, you might say. It's amazing the phone calls that pick up now that the president's back in. It's amazing. I started getting calls.
You're
from
back
people.
in vogue, right?
Yeah. But at that point, actually went to work with Senator DeMint and the folks there at CPI. So great conservative credentials. But the other part of that is they were making a difference, creating a conservative culture on Capitol Hill. And what I like to say, Ed, is a lot of members, you get all kinds of people that you get to interview and come through South Florida, many of them wanting checks written to them. But they campaign one way, they get to Washington, D.C., and they operate a different way, and I say they get Potomac fever. They lose their ever-loving mind. They remember what is important to them here in Florida, but then all of a sudden when they get to D.C., they seem to forget. So we're there to come alongside them, help them keep a backbone of steel.
You mentioned courage, and I want to talk about that. And how do you see the Trump administration now the second time around,
right,
different from the first time around?
Well, it's very different. I'm probably one of the few people that have a perspective, having campaigned with him in 2016, and I got to see some of the people that he brought in early on in the first Trump administration, and there was some disappointment, because I felt like he was not being well served by the people that came in. It was all of Washington, D.C. trying to co-opt him. This time, you talk about courageous, making courageous picks, making the right picks, putting together an incredible team. He's flipped the dynamic. Now President Trump is not only the most powerful Republican politician in the United States, which you could argue has been that way for some time. But the fact that he got such a mandate with over 76 million people, won the popular vote, which they were all conceding that he had a chance at the Electoral College, but not the popular vote. But here's the other thing: is there's real courage. You focused in on that courage. There's courage to pick people that are not necessarily going to be the go along to get along. I think in 2016 he got a lot of go along to get along, and that's why he had so much turnover, especially early on in the administration. I know as we were prepping for his second administration in 2020, there were going to be a lot of these same kind of picks. Some of the names that have come up have been a surprise. They're new on the horizon, but many of them are people that we said, well, we wish we had had them from day one. And so you're going to see a supercharged agenda coming out of the White House and out of Congress. The first 100 days will be the most productive 100 days than I think will have ever seen in modern history. I saw the president yesterday. He's all focused on filling his cabinet, but he's also focused on what do we need to get done on day one. And so, unlike 2016, not only will there be a lot of executive orders to do, but I think we ought to have legislation on his desk to make sure that we lower taxes and address the things that affect the men and women, the forgotten men and women, not only of Florida, but across the country.
The people who felt they were without a voice, which showed
Well,
up.
and they have been without a
Right.
vote. Ed, you're exactly right. They've been without a voice, and what happens is Donald Trump, that's why he's getting union workers to come across and vote for him. I can tell you, I was with some Boilermaker union guys up in Pennsylvania, and they said, I said, well, why are you voting for Donald Trump? He's just like us. Now, this is a guy that has grease under his nails, and yet Donald Trump is just like him. Well, the thing is, I can tell you, in the privacy of the Oval Office, where there's no cameras, there's no one listening and questioning, he is a stronger advocate for those people that believe in him than even when the cameras are rolling. He would constantly ask me, he says, Mark, he says, what are we doing for those construction workers? What are we doing for American manufacturing? What are we doing for the people that matter, the farmers, the growers? And so when he hit that, it is just really fascinating to me to see. It's gratifying. It's not fascinating. It's gratifying to me to see that the American people are rewarding him for that love for being their voice.
So you're confirming something that I think was an element in his campaign. Donald Trump is what he is. You see what he is, and that's what he is, whether it's in front of a 20,000 person auditorium or in the Oval Office one-on-one.
Without a doubt. In fact, I would say that the authenticity, sometimes I would want him to show more of what I got to see up close and personal. I said, show, and he said, no, I don't want to be phony. I don't want to, it's that authenticity that you're talking about. His new chief of staff, Susie Wiles, is going to do a great job for him. I mean, she's got great history here. She's got Florida connections all over the place. But Susie is bold enough to allow him to be himself. But also strong enough to push back on the influences that come his way that honestly want to take him in a direction that's not that voice for the forgotten man and woman.
And so let's talk about, since we're in the time now where he's nominated a set of people for various posts on the cabinet and otherwise, overall, what do we anticipate the administration? How hard is he going to push for his nominees? They're clearly coming from varying walks of life that we haven't really seen before in certain spots. What do we anticipate in the next 60, 90 days as we roll into the inaugural and then right after?
Yeah, so I think he's going to, I know he's going to push very hard for his nominees. He's selecting people that quite frankly are change agents. Washington, D.C., you know it. A number of the people that are tuned in right now, they know it. It's all about keeping the status quo.
But it needs a good shake, though.
Well, it does, and it needs a change. It's not working for the American people on Main Street. The people that honestly, whether it's here in South Florida or anywhere else, they're saying, K Street in Washington, D.C., where the lobbyists hang out, or Pennsylvania Avenue, it's not working for me. I don't see it. And President Trump and his team and the ones that he's actually come to nominate are change agents. But yet what happened is don't underestimate the power of legacy media and everybody else in DC that want to whisper and say, oh, this is, they'll put false narratives out there over and over and over again to try to kill it. But it's not about the nominees, it's about pushing back on Donald Trump and the American people. He sees that, and so he will fight vigorously.
So you're suggesting then is the election was just simply the first fight?
It's the first fight of many fights, but I can tell you if we rest on our laurels, we will be in deep trouble, Ed, because they're reloading right now. Now, I say that the left, they don't reload because they don't believe in Second Amendment rights, but as a Second Amendment advocate, I would say, all right, you've shot your shell. It's now time to reload. Well, they're reloading, and they're so good at it. I mean, listen, they've come after Donald Trump over and over and over again, and yet the American people said, we see through it. We've got to do the same with the nominees. We've got to make sure that the first 100 days, when it gets iffy, that you actually are coming alongside the president like you did on November 5th. Because everybody wants to have Donald Trump as the non-traditional candidate, and then they want to put him in a box to have him be president like a traditional president.
Right.
And that's not who he is. That's not what America needs.
And that's not what they voted for, to be blunt.
No. In fact, they will be disappointed. The president has a mandate, but he also has a cautious mandate. It says some of the people that voted for him. I had people that said, I've never voted for a Republican ever, and I'm voting for Donald Trump this time, and because I believe that he will change it. They will be disillusioned if he doesn't deliver. And he knows that. He's got to deliver. But if he does deliver, then what you're going to see is not 76 million votes the next time. You're going to see 80, 85 million for whoever is the nominee to come into the Oval Office after him.
So what do you see the goals then for the Trump administration, say for the first 100 days? Because you mentioned that, because that really sets a tone for the administration.
So we've been working at CPI for months to try to make sure that we grease the skids, so to speak, to be ready for that. So I think what you'll see are a number of executive orders, literally within the first 48 hours, that will roll back some of the craziness that we have, whether it be on immigration, on energy, on regulation. So a lot of the business owners that are hearing this, perhaps, help is on the way. I'm just here to tell you, help is on the way, because a lot of the agencies, all they do is rulemaking, one after another after another. Now, it keeps law firms in business because you got to fight back against it. But
I would rather work with the business to help achieve their business objectives rather than beat down the government.
And you can do that. And what happens is it's amazing how prosperous they become when you help them actually turn a profit,
right?
And then how generous they get. Listen, my most generous times as an entrepreneur were the times when I was doing well, right, that I wanted to give away to a number of other people, and so I see that coming. So I do see the first 100 days that we will do something on energy, something on the border. We will actually have two bites at the apple. In what they call budget reconciliation, yep, which actually gives us a 50-vote threshold in the Senate. So it means that Chuck Schumer can't block it.
Right.
And so we've been working on two packages. What I would see those packages being a combination of a little bit of tax relief, a little bit of border, a little bit of energy policy. And then the second package being a lot more on taxes, a lot more on the regulatory efficiency. Elon Musk, Vivek, some of these guys that you would not normally say, put me in, coach, for a government job. Now you've got billionaires coming in to say that they want to help make the government more efficient. If they're successful, even marginally successful, the American people are going to feel it exponentially.
When we say more efficient, it's got to be smaller.
So
it's got to be smaller.
So by definition, if something is efficient, it is smaller.
It's got to be smaller.
And so, listen, I'm not for no government, but I'm for very limited government.
I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Those are not really. Those are dangerous words.
Those 9
right?
words were not
right.
good. And it's interesting. I had a friend who was a conservative that used to work for me, and he quoted that I'm from the government and I'm here to help. He didn't put the first part, the 9 most dangerous words, and he put it up in his government job. Well, they were applauding him, thinking it was
they didn't
great.
Get the joke, right?
Yeah. And finally, somebody figured it out and made him take it down.
So what can some of our viewers do? How can they participate in this? What I see is President Trump is simply the tip of the spear of Americans trying to get back in control of their government.
Without a doubt.
Right, and so how can they participate? Is it one of the ways through the Institute or other ways?
Certainly, we would love their support. Come up and visit us at CPI. We're 2 blocks from the Capitol. We have more members of the House and Senate come through our building than probably any non-government building on Capitol Hill, and so we would love to have them come and support us in our work. But I want to be clear. This is not a pitch about this. This is a message to these people that are tuned in right now. Do like you are doing. Don't be afraid to speak up, because someone was going to be speaking before a camera today, have a microphone on and talking about it. And it's either going to be you or it's going to be the people that have values that are not held by you. And so for everybody that's there are more of us than there are of them. The problem is we're busy trying to make payroll and work and get things done, take kids to school,
Right.
run a family,
Right.
and embrace that. But we sometimes silence ourselves. And what the big election results on November 5th said, it's okay to say that you voted for Donald Trump.
And that's much different than 2016.
Oh, I mean, it was the hidden voter back then,
Right.
But I knew something was different in North Carolina. I started seeing these homemade signs for Trump on the overpass and stuff. I'd never seen anything like that. And I registered as a Republican originally in Florida, in Hillsborough County. That was, and I can tell you with my gray hair, many, many years ago. But to never see that kind of activity. So they need to be involved. They need to also understand that where they get their information from is biased. Generally speaking, if they're clicking on and watching legacy medias, whether it's the ABCs, the CBS, and NBCs, whoever it is, there is an inherent bias. And the president has been the first to call them out.
Right.
But even with that, if they're, quote, being neutral, I've seen it. Listen, I saw 60 Minutes do a Kamala Harris kind of interview that actually was a campaign for her.
Right.
But I was also in the West Wing when we tape Leslie Stahl. I reminded the president of this yesterday. We have a full hour or more where we were actually taping the interview. And so they did the opposite with him.
Right.
Than they did for her. And so they can say, oh, we're not biased, but it's selective editing.
And it's put some of them in an awkward position given the last couple of days of the Hunter pardon and whatnot. But all that aside, the good news is that help is on the way.
Help's on the way. Thanks to the American people, help is on the way.
And if you don't think he had a mandate, I'd say to you, even in the states that he did not win,
yeah.
I look at states like New Jersey and New Mexico and Minnesota, and those were within 5 points, and those were a lot closer than people realize. So the message is
Virginia.
not.
We have,
in Virginia, that's another great example.
We have not seen these kind of numbers in a long time, and so by that, he's over.
It's not just Florida.
He's overperformed areas where you would say the non-traditional Republican voter showed up, and it was augmented by people that had never voted for a Republican before. So what can they do? Make sure their member of Congress supports the agenda coming up, because the big pushback is going to come in the Senate and in the House where they say, well, we really can't do that. I've heard more people, if the business people that you serve each and every day said no as many times as people in Washington, D.C. said no, they would be out of business in months. And yet, they're used to saying no. So my message to them, make sure your member is saying yes, and be bold. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Be bold. Be bold with tax cuts. Be bold with making sure we have a limited government. Be bold and understand that lawsuits are going to fly. It's just the way that Washington, D.C. works. But in the end, the American people will prevail, and this president will get the agenda that he campaigned on accomplished.
On that message, being bold, I think that's a good end. Thank
Very
you so
good.
much.
Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you.
Appreciate it.